Hello, interwebs, and welcome to Closeup. I'm your host, Joe.
And I'm Justin.
I aborted a very bad attempt at a Stitch impression right before I didn't want to do it.
I was thinking the same thing.
I thought last minute, but this is going to fail miserably. Yeah. So, we're talking about Lilo and Stitch today, the 2025 live-action remake. Sorry. And this is going to be a full spoiler discussion. So we're just going to get right into it. But if you're watching this, you've probably seen the original, so you know what happens.
There's no spoilers if you've seen the original.
Yeah. So let's get into our medium shot now. And what was your expectation level going into this one?
I went into it expecting it to be, passable. I just expected it to look good and, or mostly good and be somewhat along the lines. These Disney live actions don't have the greatest track record, so I wasn't expecting that much, to be honest.
I was practically drag kicking and screaming into this thing by you. I haven't seen up to this point a single one of these Disney live action remakes. I think they're blatant cash grabs to bank on nostalgia. And
they are.
I don't know how many people are contesting that, but I just think there are better versions of these movies out there. And in the venue of capitalism, where your dollars are an indicator of support, I choose not to put my hard-earned money to most of these things. I don't want to support these. I did for this one, though.
I've forced you.
I'm a hypocrite now, so there you have it.
Now? Only now? I don't know.
For this specific issue.
Okay.
You can call me a hypocrite for just other general life things, but as far as this issue goes, I had integrity until now.
And I knew I was taking that away from you.
Yeah, and I let you, but that's fine. I'm a hypocrite. Getting into our close-up now, let's actually talk about this thing. I think, in summation, subpar special effects and narrative bloat bring down an otherwise good family drama. It wasn't as bad as I feared it would be. I actually had a mostly enjoyable time. Now, I think you and I are coming at this from different perspectives because you are a Disney aficionado. You've seen every single Disney animation. When's the last time you watched Lilo and Stitch, if you recall?
Probably like last year.
And then there's me, who I grew up on Disney, but I was never huge into Disney. I was more of a Pixar kid in terms of the animations. Never was really into Disney or DreamWorks or really any of the other ones. But I don't think I've seen Lilo and Stitch since it came out. So I was probably 4 or 5 years old. I don't even remember. I think it was, 2002, 2003?
Something like that.
Yeah. So I haven't seen it in literally 20 years. And my expectations for this one, I barely even remember the thing. When I was watching this movie, there were certain inklings of, oh, yeah, I kind of remember that. If anything, I more remember the Lilo and Stitch Disney show. I actually did watch that one. So my familiarity with Lilo and Stitch is, funny enough, more based on the TV show than it is on the movies. So I do know the characters, but not so much the story that they're adapting for this particular movie. I didn't have that attachment to it to be butthurt about the myriad of changes they made. Whereas you, I believe, are coming more from a comparison standpoint.
Yeah, and I'll probably be called out for bad takes, but I don't know. I actually enjoy when they do make changes to these Disney live actions.
There is no point in doing a remake of something if you're going to do it shot for shot exactly the same. There has to be differences to justify just the existence of it in general.
Well, I think the thing is when it comes to filmmaking and storytelling, even minor differences in shots change how you feel about characters, how certain interactions play out. And it's distinctly, it's distinctly felt in this movie as well. Like, each character is subtly different. Even if they were making it fairly shot for shot, you would still feel the difference in the characters. Just by the production itself being different.
The other day, you told me an example of that point, which was the hula performance on the stage where she had a conflict with one of the girls.
Mm-hmm.
You were telling me how in this version, Lilo is upset that Nani didn't come to the performance, and I don't remember exactly what happened on stage, but something triggered her. I think the girl called her a loser or something, or upstage her, and anyway, Lilo gets upset and pushes her off stage when everyone's smartphones are out, and it's shocking. This kid is so violent and troublesome.
Even the slight addition of having smartphones recording the whole thing kind of changes it as well.
Yeah.
It's...
Whereas, what was that scene in the original again?
I believe they get in a fight, but it's Lilo comes back wet from the beach and gets water all over the stage, which makes all the girls fall. And then I believe it's afterwards they get into a big fight. So it kind of plays out the same, but not really, because Lilo's reacting to, yes, you know, the girl's not very nice to her.
Yeah.
But she's reacting to a kind of snide comment on stage during the performance and loses her cool, so...
Which, as you said, it seems very much surface level the same. Lilo gets into a conflict with this girl at the dance recital, but her losing her cool in public on stage in full view of an audience and recording devices is a lot different than a private confrontation backstage after the fact. It makes us see Lilo as more hot-headed and less in control of her temper, and also plays more into this film's idea of Nani being a more, how shall I say this, more publicly poor caregiver. It's kind of known that she's not, despite her best efforts, a very good caregiver for Lilo, because she just can't handle this child. She can't stop her from acting out on stage, doesn't show up to her performances, doesn't provide a standard quality of life that social worker would say is acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And a private confrontation afterwards in the original movie still says, okay, well, Lilo's a troubled kid, but it's still more behind closed doors. It's contained. We can handle this. But a public outburst just puts Lilo in a bad light, but it puts Nani in a worse light, especially because she wasn't there. Which really dovetails into how this film handles their relationship. That's arguably one of the biggest changes from the original, is it all ends up in that Nani loses custody of Lilo at the end of this movie, which I thought was surprising, but fitting for this version.
It fit. With the changes made, that felt like the natural progression of this story we were being told.
Yeah, we're shown over and over that Nani has the best of intentions, but she is a very young woman herself who is in way over her head. And I know Lilo and Stitch don't help her. They get her fired from jobs or stop her from getting other ones. They cause a lot of havoc around her and kind of make her look bad in front of the social worker. But, you know, she would have looked bad anyway, is the thing. She could have worked her butt off at all these extra shifts and still maybe not had enough money to pay her outstanding bills or get Lilo health insurance like she wanted. And I like that it wasn't alien invasions or anything crazy that is what broke the straw on the camel's back. It was the the fact that Lilo nearly drowned and Nani couldn't get her health insurance, and they took her to the hospital, and the social worker basically said, okay, I know you can't pay this. So
yeah, I thought that was a smart move to push the plot forward using an existing plot line essentially from the original. That was a really smart usage of the original content.
yeah. So, but I also like that it showed a multifaceted complexity to this issue. It's not like it's saying Lilo being in foster care is because she's a really bad kid, or Nani is a really bad caretaker, or the social service lady was gunning for them and trying to break up a family. It was just a sad situation that couldn't really be helped. Lilo needed more help than Nani could provide, and the social services lady is trying to keep this situation as amenable as possible given the circumstances. She doesn't want to rip Lilo away from her family. She wants to provide a smooth transition. And they're working together. There's a cooperation. Like, she even tries to give Nani more time. It's not like she's arguably the social service lady is arguably the main antagonist to the film from a dramatic standpoint, but she's still trying to help Nani in every way she can.
Well, I think that's something they did really well with this, is they did Nani's character a lot more justice than the original did. They really focused on more the struggles that Nani is facing and how that is compounded by Lilo and Stitch's antics. And I think, when you have a kids movie and it has a resolution for the kids and the characters, that's all well and great. In the original, it's like, okay, they get the house rebuilt and everything. Nani's life is still upended from her parents' death.
Yep.
And that's not something they really address in the original movie. Mm-hmm. She's still almost right back where she was at the beginning of the animated movie. Not a heck of a lot has changed.
She just has a more robust support system around her. Yeah,
she has more supports from around, and Lilo's kind of on her path to be a bit better. But in this version, we got to see how everything could come out good for more than just Lilo and Stitch. It worked out well for Nani as well. And it had a much better light on social work in general, which I appreciated.
I have vague images as a kid of Cobra being the sunglasses CIA guy, and it's sort of a basic thing of human psychology, but you cover the eyes, it's like covering the window to the soul, just makes somebody seem immediately more threatening or closes you off on an emotional level when you can't see their eyes like that. So that's how I remember Cobra as a kid, is just this hard-ass guy. And maybe that's how he came across as more antagonistic in that movie. I don't recall. But this was a friendlier tone from the social worker, for sure. And it's a big theme of this movie is kind of living for yourself versus your dependence. And that's Nani's main theme of the movie, because she's constantly getting barraged with other ideas. Like, her neighbor is, oh, how did that, the application acceptance letter, that just ended up in your bag and out of your garbage somehow. She's trying to push her to get back into school because she was really good at marine biology and could have had a future there if her parents hadn't died and she got forced to look after her sister. Which I guess she wasn't forced. She probably took that on willingly.
Well, but it seems like that was her choice. Like,
yeah,
she was obviously granted guardianship of her, but she still had a choice to make in the matter, but she felt like that was her responsibility, was to step up. And honestly, especially, I found in this version, they made Nani and David seem a lot younger than the original. And I think that applies a lot, where it's like, okay, somebody so young shouldn't be stuck in this position. And she's not really stuck, but she feels like she's stuck.
She's practically a kid herself.
Yeah, that's the thing. And yeah.
I mean, the ending kind of gives you that Hollywood feel-good sort of thing where, oh, okay, they're very far apart, but they still get to see each other through portal technology and whatnot. But still, within the narrative of the movie, they're still allowed to see each other, and when Nani gets back from school, they still get visits, and they're like, modern technology allows them to talk all the time. They still video chat all the time together, and it is, besides the portal technology, it is a nice but bittersweet sort of ending for the two of them, but it does logically fit the story that they're trying to tell in this version of the movie. So, one problem I had with the movie, we talked multiple times about Cobra and about David. I felt like Cobra and David were two big globules of fat on this movie that it could have just been trimmed out entirely. I didn't need to see either of them. I understand that their inclusion here is to pay homage to the source material. People would cry foul if they didn't show up. But also, you reminded me that they cut out the shark villain guy entirely, who was in the original movie. So this movie already showed a willingness to cut source material fundamentally. So you should just keep going and make a better product, I figure.
Yeah, I feel like Cobra had literally nothing to do.
Absolutely nothing.
And David had his moments, but effectively his role was taken over by his mother, which made sense in a case of, with going back to what I said earlier, where it feels like they were younger. It wouldn't make sense for David to be giving Nani this advice when they're both so young still. So, in a way, his role got removed, but on his argument, he didn't waste time, at least. He was a background character, essentially. He didn't have that much to do. His inclusion was, welcomed, but he didn't waste that much time, at least. Cobra kind of wasted time.
Actively.
And did nothing for the movie, basically.
I can't think of a single reason this CIA subplot where they're going after Stitch impacted literally anything. Because in this film, we already have the aliens going after Stitch. We already have a Manhunt B plot. So we're going to do a second Manhunt C plot. It's just, we're already seeing this. And this character isn't the social worker like he was in the original movie. There's no twist to be had with him. He is exactly what you see. He's just a CIA agent looking for a possible alien threat on the island of Hawaii. And, well, I guess Hawaii's not an island, it's multiple. Don't come at me. I'm trying to, get in front of that. But it's just useless for him to be there. Because Jumba and Pleakley covered the appropriate ground there. And maybe we should talk a bit about them while we're at it. I had mixed opinions. We've gone on for a very long time talking about the more grounded aspect of the film, which I think we should probably circle back at some point because we never really talk much about the actual sisters' relationship in the movie. We talked a lot about the outside circumstances around them, but we didn't talk about the sisters. But the whole other half of this movie is the aliens and the weirdness. Okay, well, subject 626 is escaped and we have to send 2 of our guys to find him, and he's ended up on this alien planet Earth, and okay, let's do this manhunt thing. And that's half the movie, and that's the movie I enjoyed quite a bit less than the more grounded social work drama plotline. And I know this is like that's kind of the fun part of the premise. That's for the kids. But like as an adult who really didn't have a huge investment in Lilo and Stitch, I enjoyed the custody storyline more.
And that's something I brought up when we got out of it was that that's actually showing a really good strength for a kids movie. The fact that you're not the target audience, and yet there was still a plot line in there that kept you invested in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
You may not enjoy the stuff that was aimed at the target audience, but there was still something there for you. And I think that's something that's missing in a lot of kids movies nowadays.
Definitely. And to be clear, I'm not, like, I am a film snob, but I also am a huge sci-fi fan, and basically I'll listen to schlock sci-fi all day, but I need a certain level of quality into it, and these aliens didn't meet my marker for quality entertainment. But to be fair, the kids seemed to enjoy it, as did many of the adults. There were a lot of jokes that were quite amusing. Just in general, the humor in this movie, I'd argue it landed more than it didn't. There was a lot of jokes that I didn't personally laugh out loud at, but I smiled quite a bit throughout the movie. Some made me go, huh.
It made me laugh a little bit. It was pretty good for that side. I mean, there was obviously stuff where it's like, okay, I mean, you know, some of the kids laughed at it, but not really my taste of humor anymore. But
yeah, I was surprised at certain jokes, which a lot of the adults laughed at more than the kids. So there is some humor for adults in here as well. Now let's circle back to the emotional sister bond, and then we'll talk about the aliens. Just kind of bounce around a little bit.
Just like the movie did.
For sure. So I quite like the sisterly bond there. I think the strongest scenes of the movie were the scenes when the two of them were having their heart-to-hearts together, where Nani's chasing Lilo through the house, or lecturing her about Stitch, or they're talking about their parents together. And like, you know, I did feel for Nani when Lilo was like, oh, I don't like you as a mom. You're okay, you're a good sister, but I don't like you as a mom. And then later she says, oh, well, I kind of do like you as a mom, actually. But there are nice moments between the two of them. Even though Nani seems very overwhelmed a lot of the time, she's very much focused on, okay, gotta get my job, gotta pay the bills, gotta deal with all these things. Like Lilo and Stitch are basically just in the background for her a lot of times. They're like in her sight, but she's not really paying attention because she's gotta focus on more adult things, and just like, I'll make sure they don't die, but I have to pay attention. And I do think that detracts from a certain extent, just because it shows she doesn't pay Lilo a heck of a lot of mind, but I also understand why she doesn't. Her attention is divided and she's very scatterbrained. And the actress Sydney Agadong did a very good job of conveying that overwhelmed sense the entire movie.
She was by far the standout actress, like in the whole movie. She was fantastic. I thought she did that character excellently for the story they were telling. Perfect.
Yeah, I also really enjoyed Maya Kiloa. Probably mispronouncing that, but that's Lilo. I think for a child actress, she did an excellent job.
Yeah, she was pretty good.
She conveyed the proper emotions at the proper times and felt like a cute kid who's just taking these situations as they come to her and reacting accordingly. There were scenes where she had to be pretty vulnerable and cry with her sister and all that, and get really invested in Stitch. She had to show off a solid emotional range. I give her quite a bit of credit. So,
do you want to talk about Stitch a bit?
Yeah, well, it's Lilo and Stitch. We haven't talked about Stitch at all. I think Stitch was, well, let's just say at the surface level, he was the best CGI work in the film.
Oh, by far. You could tell they put a lot of effort into him. But, being basically the main character, it's pretty important to make sure that it looks good.
I really like the texture in his fur specifically.
Yeah.
There was good attention to detail.
The facial work, I don't know how exactly they do it, but everything that they conveyed, like when he wasn't speaking, you could tell what he was thinking, and from facial and other uses of camera work. Especially in this version, they really went in on the idea that Stitch is very smart and very adaptable, which I really liked that portion of the movie where it's like, okay, every time Stitch gets in a situation where he's stuck, you're like, you can see his brain processing and see what he's analyzing, what he's using. You know exactly what he's thinking. And I thought that was very, very impressive.
For sure. Yeah, he was an enjoyable character for that reason. I really liked the scene in the kennel when Lilo hears him talk for the first time and she's introducing him to other people. Hey, this dog can talk. And he's raising his hand like he's about to introduce himself. And then they're like, silly child, dogs can't talk. And then he shuts up. Roof. Bark.
Yeah, because he realizes he'll blow his cover that he's trying to go for, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the parts I thought it was very amusing, that one bit when Stitch was in the car with Lilo, and it was like this child's car anyway, but he's trying to take her to the nearest city to wreak as much destruction as possible. And then he finds out that he's stuck on an island surrounded by water and he can't get off because he'll just physically sink and drown.
That was perfect. The overlapping of Jumba explaining exactly what his creation would do, and then to that perfect timing of, yeah, we're on an island completely isolated.
No big cities. Isn't it great? Yeah. And he's just losing his mind. No. I also enjoyed that every single time he found something even vaguely resembling a gun, he'd go for it. Whether it was a sprayer behind the, I don't know what you call those, just like the things that...
Behind the bar?
Yeah, behind the bar. That's like on tap. Or or like the caulking gun.
That was a good one.
Yeah, or the spray bottles, as you pointed out.
Yeah.
When they're just anything that's vaguely gun-like, he'll go for it.
He just went for it, yeah.
Yeah.
Which they took away his guns in this version. He wasn't allowed to have his guns at the beginning.
Which is funny how we're censoring things even more for kids now. 20 years ago, a cartoon character having cartoon guns at the start of a movie was fine. You just couldn't shoot bullets in them. And what now? Characters can't even have guns in kids' movies.
Basically, the only one who had a gun was Jumba, basically after his full-blown, okay, I'm the bad guy of the movie now. That's when he actually started firing his real gun. For the rest of the time, they're using like sleep darts or a portal gun, but not till he goes full bad guy and he's like, okay, I'm the bad guy. That's the first time in the entire movie you see him, like anybody, fire an actual weapon, basically.
That's very true. I sympathize with Stitch enough that there were multiple points where I cringed very hard at how graphic certain acts of abuse to him were, even though I knew he could take it. The two that I'm like, ooh, are when he got run over by the bus. I was like, yikes, that's kind of graphic. They were a kid's movie, like, oh, the cute like dog runs out into the street and then gets like barreled under the wheels of this bus. That one was like, okay. And at the end, when he's basically starting to drown to death, I'm like, oh, this is dark. It makes me sad. Just like, I know he's a sentient being who's just acting like a dog, and he's pretty indestructible. He could take most of it, but I'm like, well, okay, so they're not shying away from making you care about and sympathize for this thing, and I cared about him enough. Yeah, that ending did sort of bother me though, when Nani's running across the ocean floor with him. I'm
It
like,
was set up earlier, though.
that seemed like a long way to go with her being underwater the whole time.
But they set it up earlier saying, like, she trained specifically to do that. He's effectively a bundle of rocks, and she literally trained earlier with bundles of rocks under the water. So I thought that was pretty well set up.
I guess so. It's just, there was one shot. I guess it's just one shot that ruins it then, because when they first get to shore, they see the wreckage very, very far out. And I buy that, okay, fine, her and David can get there on the surfboard. That's fine. They can swim back with Lilo, okay. But like, to run that distance, weighted down on the bottom of the floor all the way back to shore, that seemed like a really far distance from what they showed us, from the shore to the wreckage.
Well, only to get to, like, the height you can be out of the water. She wasn't really that deep
All right.
at that point. And, like, David and her got there pretty quickly on the surfboard. It wasn't that far of a distance, but I do see what you mean. It is a little bit of a stretch there.
It felt improbable. It kind of broke my immersion a bit right at the end there, which also didn't help because the third act of this movie's very dragged out. And that, I know it's not just because it's the parts I cared least about, just like the alien stuff that made it feel even longer, but it was long. Like, okay, Jumba's taking the ship, and he's like shooting up their entire house, and then they escape on the ship, and Lilo got to sabotage the ship, and then we have a crash landing, and we're in the water, and Stitch is drowning. It was just very long.
I don't know. I didn't find it that dragged out. I thought it was paced pretty well. It depends. You got to be invested in it too, because I thought the slow pursuit around the house was really interesting to me. The way, like, especially with the filmmaking, the way they kind of did everything, and then it was interesting, especially when you're having to shift a character from being like, kind of the good guy. Like at the end of the original, he's a good guy. Well, in this one, it's like, no, he's doing like full-blown bad guy monologue. Like, so that kind of probably needed some room to breathe as well.
I think my other big problem with it is that a lot of the third act rested on the shoulders of Zach Galifianakis, who, for my money, gave the weakest performance in the whole movie.
Yeah.
I think normally he's a very capable actor. He's got a decent range, but he just felt like he was sleepwalking his way through this whole role. I don't know if he was trying to play a very stoic character who just doesn't really want to be here because he's kind of a prisoner on work release and he just didn't want to be there. I get that, but that's never an interesting choice for an actor to make in any circumstance. So if it was a choice, I disagree with it. If he was actively just didn't care about the material, it also showed if that was the case. So
yeah, he's easily the weakest character in the whole movie.
Yeah, whatever the case, I didn't like his presentation. And I noticed it right away from before he even showed up in person. The moment Jumba talked, I didn't even know it was Zach Galifianakis, to be honest. But even just hearing him talk, I'm like, ooh, that is weak voice acting. Right from scene one in the movie. I was taken out. Oh, yeah, I do not like that.
He had his moments. Like, obviously, he did really well when he was getting excited and explaining what 626 could actually do. And that worked really well for that scene. And then his villain monologue around the house I thought that was really well done, but the rest of the movie, he was just so weak the whole time.
It also didn't help that he was paired up with Billy Magnuson's Pleakley, who is just genuinely endearing. I really, really liked him. He was just a very fun character who, both in his alien form and in his Billy Magnuson form, I was just charmed by this person. I enjoyed watching him. To me, that's a character that, when I talk about not liking the alien plots as much, I consider him more the exception to that. I'm talking more about Jumba and like the space fleet and all those. I really like Pleakley. He's just his enthusiasm for everything Earth culture is just really funny to me, especially when he gets certain things wrong. His energy is great, especially when it's contrasted with the Jumba who's sleepwalking through the movie, like I said, which I understand
it
they
worked
wanted
when they had their scenes together, kind of, because of that comparison.
There was a contrast.
But anytime Jumbo's by himself, it doesn't quite work most of the time.
I also love the running gag where he was wearing different outfits the entire movie. I didn't notice it quite at first because I'm like, okay, yeah. It was only a couple of scenes in when they kept coming back to them. I'm like, wait a minute. He wasn't wearing Jumbo's in the same clothes. Pleakley is not. And then I was paying attention and then I noticed, every single scene he's changing clothes, which was a great gag.
Speaking of them in like their human forms, I've read a lot online that people are like, oh, that was kind of lazy that they just threw them in. One, they were in the human form for about a third of the movie, basically.
Yeah.
Where in the original they were supposed to be disguised as humans. And it's a joke in the original movie that, the disguise looks really weird and it's like, okay, that's a really ugly woman. In this one, I kind of bought into it that I'm like, yeah, it actually does make sense that they would look like actual humans because you wouldn't buy it the same. This is a more grounded version and it wouldn't work the same.
Suspension of disbelief in a cartoon is different than in a live action movie.
Yeah.
It's just, you have to make certain concessions.
And that's why I don't think that was laziness. I don't think that was anything to do with that. I think it was a very specific choice. If they were going to be lazy, they wouldn't have even designed these CGI characters to begin with. They could have gotten away with just throwing them in.
They would have had Billy Magnuson's very first appearance be like, oh, well, I'm already ready to go for my mission to Earth as a human man.
You'd already be a human. You'd be like, I'm an expert in humans. See, I'm already ready to go. There you go.
And then if they might have like one shot of him turn into an alien like they did with the ice cream guy where he turned into the alien.
Yeah.
And that might be it. But no, they had him in an alien form enough of the time. So I think one thing about this movie to keep in mind, I always do my best to judge things on their own merits. I'm trying very hard not to play comparison games, which is very hard to do. And I am definitely somebody who falls prey to this myself, but I understand people are nostalgic for a thing, but to criticize every change just because it's a change is bad faith viewership. You have to ask yourself why changes were made for this specific version. You can disagree with them. That's fine. But why were the changes made and why do you want things to be exactly the same in a different project? It's like you and I were talking the other day. It's sort of the idea of a remake is it's like traditional theater. How many times has Shakespeare been redone in the last 500 years? Not every version is the same. In fact, every adaptation finds a new way to tell the same story. Same dialogue a lot of the times, same settings, but you find new ways to do it, to keep it fresh. And this one, as far as that sort of tradition goes, is still pretty in the pocket as far as the original goes. I found, like I was saying with like Cobra and David, it could have gone even further out of left field.
Mm.
It could have done even more to differentiate itself, and it probably would have been better for it, frankly. But just the fact that it's different isn't enough criticism for me.
Yeah, that's my hot take with kind of all of these remake movies, is that I think it comes down to what feels natural for the film you're making. And you shouldn't be forcing yourself into a box while making a movie.
Yeah.
Some of the weakest parts in this movie, they just felt clunky, were jokes that were brought in from the original. It was like almost like a checklist. Like the executives are like, oh, make sure you do these jokes. And it's like, okay, that didn't quite fit with everything. I mean, it's there. It kind of fits, but to me, it felt clunky putting those pieces in. But it's almost like, okay. When it comes to the remakes,
mm-hmm.
the next one that people are like, yeah, it's pretty good. I agree with it as well. Aladdin.
Okay.
I think it was pretty well done.
Yep.
Will Smith as the genie is pretty good. He's actually really good when he's playing Will Smith's genie.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas there's portions where you can tell it was like, here's your directions to play the genie more like Robin Williams did it. And that version that he was doing for parts of the movie never sold me. But when Will Smith did his brand of comedy for his genie, when like deeper into the movie and, you know, different parts, you can just feel when he was playing his version of the character versus where he's being pushed to be more like Robin Williams. And I think if they should have leaned into that the whole movie, they should have let him play his own character.
You can tell the difference between an inspired take on something and just copying.
Mm-hmm.
There is a way to do the genie that feels like the genie, but it doesn't have to be Robin Williams' genie. Will Smith could have done his own thing the entire time, and that would have been a perfectly valid take. Even if it sucked, it would have been a valid take. You could have said, oh, well, you know, Robin Williams is going to be better no matter what. That's possible. It's probable. But should every person who ever plays the genie be shoehorned into doing it exactly the same as Robin Williams just because it's an all-time great voice acting performance?
Yeah.
No, you got to do it your own way. Otherwise, you're going to feel like you're copying.
It's like, why would you hire a comedian to do it? Like, Will Smith is known for comedy. He's a pretty good comedy actor. He's actually really good. Why would you hire him to do it if you're not going to let him play into his strengths?
Do it his way.
Let him do it his way. And when he did it his way, it was great. He was fantastic.
Yeah.
That's my side tangent. Lilo and Stitch doesn't have as much of that. It's just the checkboxes of stuff that was in the original that has to kind of play in there. And it's like, okay, you know, Stitch does this.
You could feel when they were obligated to stick to the source material instead of going their own way. And you could tell they had ideas for going their own way. But they felt...
Well, some of them did. Some of them fit. Stitch on the record player. In the original, it's like Nani's like a jaw drop moment. Like, what? In this one, she's so busy and she's so focused, she doesn't even notice what's going on. She's busy on her phone or with the bills. She was busy with something. The scene plays out entirely differently. But you still have the same joke. It's like it checks the box off, but they did it their way. They did it the way this movie felt appropriate for. Where some of the other ones didn't blend as well. It's like it was just like, okay, This is a checkbox. We got to have it.
Because we're trying to present Nani as this very overwhelmed person in this movie. So even genuinely cool things right in front of her, she can't be bothered because her head is so focused on less magical things like bills right in front of her. Even this alien singing Elvis on the record player is goes right over her head. Which, yeah, I mean, maybe that's some kind of meta commentary on just our culture in general. We're so inundated with stimuli that even just genuinely cool things can go over our heads sometimes. We're all can't see the forest through the trees, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's the biggest problem with Lilo and Stitch, is that it felt too afraid to go its own way when it was working. And I do appreciate what changes they made, but I need to rewatch the original to say. I'm not going to say it's better, or even the changes they made were better, because I don't really remember the original very well. But as a movie in its own right, I think it worked pretty well. I'm not overly sold on it. Like I said, a lot of the stuff that I enjoyed was sort of buried under parts that I didn't. There was a lot of narrative bloat in here, and the special effects work, like I said, kind of broke some immersion besides Stitch. It's just, I like half the movie in here, and the other half, I didn't hate it, but I'm very ambivalent towards it.
Well, it seems like, for the most part, the main characters, you didn't really have any complaints with them.
No.
They're all well done. It's mostly the B plot you have an issue with. And even at that point, you know, it works when it works. It doesn't work when it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But for the most part, the main core of the story is really well done, I think.
It's definitely not A-tier cinema, but it's watchable. It's fine. It's arguably even good. I didn't love it, but I did get a few emotional reactions out of it, which in terms of art, that can you provoke emotion out of me? That's kind of the very base layer you should be at to be considered halfway good. So, yes, it did invest me and provoke some emotional moments. I think my eyes welled up a couple of times. I cared about the main characters. But, yeah.
I definitely think, there's definitely scenes that work really well in this movie, that are done incredibly well. Like the filmmaking, the look, the acting, the two leads have great chemistry in this movie, and just there's a lot of parts that work really good, and then there's parts that are just kind of
There's a better film in here buried under some fluff.
I think that's pretty common when it comes to movies.
I think I see so many movies that I'm like, this movie would be irredeemable even if you got rid of, most movies I see, they don't work on a core level.
Mm-hmm.
This one at least had
it's got a solid core, yeah.
That was kind of messed up only in execution, but a lot of it's good. I also didn't really care for the visual style. Just, I don't know if that's necessarily
what part?
I'm not going to say it's a critique on the way it's made, because I think it's technically okay. It's probably more just a personal preference. I just didn't care for the visual look of it. It just felt kind of, I don't know, the cinematography just kind of looked cheap to me. In a way, it looked more lower budget, and maybe that's just... And the set design as well.
That's probably going to come down to needing intricate CGI characters. You can't do as much advanced camera work.
No, it's not even that. It's even just the regular shots filmed on sets just kind of felt like, I don't know, just stuff I've seen on, on Disney Plus or whatever, it just didn't feel cinematic. I guess it just felt.
I don't know. I thought it did pretty well cinematically for certain scenes.
Yeah.
Specifically the surfing scene is extremely well done. I really like the cinematography when it came to like the truck scene where Stitch is trying to avoid Jumba and Pleakley.
Yep.
Or stuff like the fire when he's doing the fire dancing and then everything goes bad.
Yep.
That scene I thought was really well done, especially for a dark scene with bright elements. I thought it looked great for that. That is typically very hard to do. Filming fire at night is hard.
Like I said, I don't think it's technically bad. It just didn't resonate with me. I just didn't care for the look of it. I'm having a tough time codifying why, but just something in my gut says, not for me.
No, I
visually speaking.
I thought it was pretty good visually. Just not a lot of scenes had like dynamic camera work or anything, but
maybe that was part of it.
I think that was a lot. Like,
it felt stilted.
There's a lot of really good scenes, and then it's just uninspired for the scenes where you can tell there's not as much heart put into it. But you can you could list out the scenes that you just know they really cared about doing.
Yep. Or maybe that's part of it. It's just uninspired shots. It's not necessarily. It just kind of looks flat, and like there were no shots that made me say, "Wow." Maybe that's it. Maybe it's the framing of it, or the lack of camera movement, like you're saying. I also didn't love the color either. I think uninspired is the way to, like, it's not.
I rather liked the color because it was nice and vibrant. You don't see that in a lot of movies anymore. Like,
yeah, I mean, it was vibrant, but it just, I don't know, just something felt off about it to me. I don't know. I'm, once again, having a tough time codifying visual elements. That's not my area of expertise as a reviewer, but yeah.
No, you like what you like. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have a contrasting opinion, but that's going to happen.
Your contrasting opinions are helping me codify more what I don't like about it. I like your take on it because you do know the visual elements better, what goes into it, and your opinions help me describe mine better. So yeah, my consensus on this is Lilo and Stitch 2025 is worth a watch if you have no interest in seeking out the superior original, or if you're a fan of the original who can get over your preconceived notions and watch this film on its own terms.
Yeah, I will give it a good rating. I was hesitant to make it maybe mid-tier garbage, but it's actually pretty good, I think. Even coming from someone who really likes the original, I really liked this one. I really liked it. I had a great time with it.
Okay. So where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram at jchurchtpm.
And you can find me on Instagram at ThoughtPlaneMedia. And check out thoughtplane.ca for everything else we do. There's hundreds of posts there for free. And you can donate $1 or $2 there if you like our work and you're feeling generous. We hope to see you on the next Close Up with Ryan and Joe. Till next time.
Take care.